Everybody to today's lesson. Let's make sure everything is in the camera's vision. Okay, I'll quickly turn off my monitor as well, just in case it shines on the board. So today we're looking at words which are very easily mixed up. And these are actually words which are very easily mixed up by native speakers. I know that there are a lot of foreign people in the audience. I know that there aren't many native speakers in the audience, but these are actually words that native speakers very often mix up, that they very often get confused with. Now, I've chosen these words partly because there is an exercise that you can do having watched this class. Having watched this class, you can go to Bristol University website. If you just type in Bristol University confusable words, they call them confusable words. I think that they are confusing words. In my opinion, not many people use the word confusable. Most people would use the word confusing words. But I understand what they're trying to say. They're trying to say that these words are easily mixed up. And so I've called this lesson words that you mustn't mix up. Now, one in particular on the board is one that I have certainly mixed up in many classes on YouTube as well. And so I shouldn't do, and I want to remind myself not to mix up those words, but you shouldn't mix them up either. So as I say, really this class is aimed at native speakers in a way, but also foreigners out there that want to make sure that they don't mix up these words. They ought to watch this class too. So let's get on with it. Weather and weather. So the first thing to notice is that these two words sound exactly the same. Yeah, they sound exactly the same. They're spelt differently, but the pronunciation is exactly the same. And simply put, the difference between these two words, and I suppose I'd better get a pen, sorry about that. Here's a pen. The difference between these two words is pretty simple. Weather, this weather you might consider as the word if. Although, do watch my video on if versus whether in order to understand that some style guides only want you to use whether when it's possible. Hi Alexander Goman, I saw you there. So weather is sunny, rainy, snowy, autumn. Weather refers to the climatic conditions, yeah? Weather refers to what kind of weather you have. So the weather in England today is not very nice. It's raining outside, it's cloudy, it's not particularly hot, but I actually quite like cooler weather. I don't like hot weather, especially because I work in this shed and it is a sun trap. And it means that it gets very, very hot in this shed, even when it's just a little bit warm. So, I actually prefer cooler weather. So you understand weather refers to what the weather is like outside. And weather is a conjunction, or it can be a few other parts of speech, but it's when you say something like, I don't know whether he will come to the party. Or in informal English, I don't know if he will come to the party. Yeah, I don't know whether I will stay or I will go. So very often it's used like that, this whether, to show two different options, or when it's used to show that you're not sure whether something will happen. Very similar to the word if. I don't know if something will happen, but whether is the more formal version. Okay, so they're different parts of speech. This whether is a noun, certainly. The other whether can be a conjunction or a few other things. Okay, so the next two words are affect and effect, and they sound very similar again. I wouldn't say they're exactly the same, these two. These two are pronounced exactly the same, these two are not. And the simple way of describing the difference is to affect and an effect. In other words, this is a verb and this is a noun, okay? But their meanings are similar. But if you say that what he said had no effect on me, that's using effect as a noun. It had no effect on me. But if you want to say that this affected his feelings, yeah, maybe it hurt his feelings, then you're using affect as a verb. So if you're using affect as a verb, use this one with an A. And if you're using effect as a noun, use this one with an E. To affect with an A, but an effect with an E. So again, it's parts of speech really that are important here. And I happen to think that parts of speech are the most important thing if you want to get good at language and linguistics. It's worth thinking about parts of speech, nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. Okay, number 3, it's and its. There are loads of mistakes with this one because obviously the only difference is the tiny apostrophe. And again, I'm going to try and do it quickly. This one is it is, which is why it's got an apostrophe. This one is only one word and it's the possessive pronoun, the singular possessive pronoun. So just like there is the plural possessive pronoun, 2 dogs were wagging their tails. This is the singular possessive pronoun. 1 dog was wagging its tail. So if you're talking in the possessive sense, and the way to do a little test is to say to yourself, can I put it into it is? If you can, it's this one. If you can't, 1 dog is wagging it is tail. No, it doesn't work. It must be this one. So that's the little test you can do, and anybody can do that in their head. And if it doesn't sound like it's it is, if it is doesn't sound correct, it must be this one. Don't use an apostrophe. But technically, it's a possessive pronoun like their or my or your, his, her, its. Hello, Alexander. Okay, there, and there. So again, we've got 3 words that sound exactly the same. And that's why we mix them up. But they are, of course, different. This one is the possessive pronoun, like its. There's a link here. These two are similar. It's, their, his, her, your, my, our. They're all possessive pronouns. They refer to possessing something. My t-shirt, your hat, his car, their dogs, its tail. Okay? I live quite close to London. It's not far from London. Okay, so this one is the possessive pronoun. This one is 2 words, just like it is. This one is they are. Okay, so there here is they are. We often shorten they are coming to they're coming to the party. Yeah, they're coming to the party. We shorten it together. And when we do that, we need an apostrophe to show the missing A and then an RE. They are coming, they're coming. And this one, well, this one can be a few different things. It could be a dummy pronoun, like when you say there is a table in the room, there is a chair in the room, there is a God, there is a terrible storm outside. That would be a dummy pronoun, and I just mean a noun before the is that doesn't actually refer to anything at all. So it could be a pronoun like that, or it could be an adverb like, where is my car? It is there. Yeah, or it is here. So it's like here and there. It's similar to here, that form of there. So there's a couple of different ways that we can use this there. It could be an adverb, it could be a pronoun. There are probably a couple of other parts of speech that I can't think of at the moment. Okay, number 5 is my mistake. I've got to hold my hands up to this mistake because I certainly make this mistake in speech when I'm not thinking. But the difference is very simple. These are both quantifiers, they're determiners, they tell you how many of the noun, they quantify the noun. But we use fewer with countable nouns and we use less with uncountable nouns. So if you want to talk about something like he makes fewer mistakes nowadays. I think I always say less mistakes, but that's wrong. Don't say what I say. Say I make fewer mistakes, because mistakes is countable. You can put an S on the end. You can say 1 mistake, 2 mistakes, 3 mistakes. So it's I make fewer mistakes nowadays, but I have less time nowadays. I have less money nowadays. I have less patience nowadays. It's got to be uncountable. You can't count time when it means time, like not when it means times, like 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. I agree, you can count them then. That's when times is countable. So we say, how many times have you seen this film? Many is countable, much is uncountable. But we say, I have less free time nowadays, for example, because you don't mean how many times, you mean free time, generally speaking. So I have less free time, I have less money. You can't count money, 1 money, 2 monies, 3 monies, doesn't make any sense. And I have less patience, 1 patience, 2 patiences, 3 patiences, no. So it's for uncountable nouns, this one's for countable, but loads of native speakers make this mistake and say less before a countable noun. So listen out for that mistake. That's a mistake that a lot of natives make, not only me. Okay, like and as. There is a difference between like and as. In formal academic English, anyway. In speech, we use them more or less interchangeably. People very often use like as a subordinating conjunction. They use like plus clause. For example, very well-known idiom, you look like you've seen a ghost. Well, that's technically not correct. You should say, you look as if you have seen a ghost. Okay, you look as if you have seen a ghost. Because as is the subordinating conjunction in academic English. Like is a preposition in academic English, which means you need to use like with a noun after it. Yep, I know like is a verb as well in other sentences, but in academic English, when you're using it to mean, well, look like, sound like, feel like, it must be plus a noun, not plus a clause. Use as if or as though if you want to use a clause. But that's only for academic English. And somebody just said, isn't it a bit posh to say fewer instead of less? Well, it's correct. Some people will think you're a bit posh if you say fewer instead of less, sure. But they're people that always use less, and so they're people that always make a mistake when they say this. And sure, it's true that many of, lots of times, me and my friends, everybody says my friends, everybody should say my friends and I when they're the object, but everybody says me and my friends. So this brings us on to the next one. In this area, everybody says me and my friends went to the park, or me and my friends did this, or me and my wife did that, or me and my husband did this. You shouldn't say that, because me here is the subject, which is I. This is the subject pronoun, I. So it should be my friends and I went to the park. My wife and I bought a new car. My cousin and I went on holiday together. It should be I in the subject position, not me. But loads of natives will say me in the subject position. And generally speaking, when you pick up the phone and say it's me, which is what all natives say, it should actually be it is I. Because you've got the subject complement after the verb to be, because to be is a copular verb. And that means that the correct version is it is I, which sounds ridiculously formal, incredibly formal. But still, that's the correct version if you're interested. But very few people will use that correct version. And I've noticed that even in classes, when you ask people something like, who wants to go first? Maybe you're doing an exercise with the class and you say, who wants to go first? If they're a class of English kids, they'll all say me, me, me. And it should really be I do, I do, I do, because then they're using the grammar correctly, but very few of them do. Okay, you see how I noticed few there, few of them, not less of them, or very, very little of them. No, few of them, because countable. Okay, so I is the subject, me is only the object, but in loads of expressions we use me instead of I. Okay, loads of expressions, and it even starts to sound pompous to use the I. So I do warn you that if you do use the I correctly, you will sound a little bit posh. Nonetheless, you know, that's something to be aware of, I would say. It doesn't matter, it's just something to be aware of. Okay, who and whom. This is more or less dead, this word, in my area anyway. Nobody says whom. I've never heard anybody say whom. Maybe once or twice in my life have I heard somebody say whom, but it's really rare, really rare. Nonetheless, this is simply the object, and this is simply the subject. So it's just like I and me, and that's why I've put them very close to I and me. So you ought to say something like, can I ask who is calling? Who, not whom, because it's the subject, yeah? Who is calling? Who is the subject of is? Whom you ought to say when it's something like, I don't know whom is coming to the party. Yeah, I don't know who, oh sorry, no, that's wrong. I don't know who is coming to the party. Who is subject again, who is coming. Let me think of a different one. I don't know whom I should ask. Yeah, I don't know whom I should ask. I should ask him. Yeah, whom I should ask. Whom is the object of ask. But very few people use that one correctly. Very few. Most people say who all of the time, and I do because it's what everybody else does. So it's rubbed off on me, that habit. Okay, we're going to now move on to more vocabulary than grammar. Uninterested, disinterested. Uninterested means not interested, as in, you know, you're not interested in somebody's proposal, you are uninterested. But disinterested means neutral or dispassionate in some way. Indifferent, I would say, is a good synonym of disinterested. Indifferent. A long time ago when I was at university, we had to study Kant. We had to study Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher. And I seem to remember him writing, I seem to remember his writing a novel, sorry, not a novel, a philosophy book called The Critique of Judgment. And he claimed that when we admire something beautiful, we do so in a disinterested way, without any emotion or passion. So we appreciate art in a very unemotional, detached way. In a disinterested way. Now, you might completely disagree with Kant. I'm not sure that his argument was completely convincing, but it's just an example of how to use disinterested. Disinterested means without passion, without emotion, in a neutral kind of way. Okay, lose and loose, they sound different and they are different. Lose is the verb, loose is the adjective. You can wear loose clothes, which means baggy clothes. Yeah, loose clothes, baggy clothes. I prefer loose clothes. But if you lose your wallet, then you need to go and find it because it's got some money in it, right? If you lose your patience, you get angry. If you lose, you can lose anything, yeah? And it's when you can't find it. It's the opposite of find. You lose something and you can't find it. So, nice simple one. Cite, cite, cite. So again, 3 words that sound the same. If you cite somebody or something, you quote that person. Yeah, you cite something they have said. So it's the same as to quote someone, to repeat what someone else has said. So you could cite from a certain text, something like that. Your sight, on the other hand, this one, is how well you see, usually. So you can check your eyesight. You can go to the opticians and have one of those eye tests where they are checking your sight. But a sight can also be a wonderful view from somewhere. So you go sightseeing and you go to a new city and you admire the sights. You admire what you can see there. So there's 2 meanings to that middle one. It's your vision and it's also the lovely things you can see in a city or a town. Lastly, site, like a building site or a website, is a place of an area of some description. Okay, so a building site is somewhere where builders are working because they're building a new block of flats or a new house. And a website, I think you all know what a website is. Here is my website if anybody would like to go there to buy my book. Okay, accept and accept. Again, parts of speech will help us here. Accept is a verb, to accept somebody, maybe to accept somebody's behavior or to accept what someone has done. It means to come to terms with it in some kind of way. Or you might accept somebody into your school or into your club, and it means allow them to come in and accept them and allow them to enter that club or institution. Except is a preposition and it's usually used with except for. Yeah, except, doesn't have to be though, but it's a preposition, which means it's followed by a noun, and it's showing you what the exceptions are. So you might say, I know every European language except German, French, Spanish and Italian, something like that. And it means you know all the other languages, but not those four. Okay? Next one, illicit and illicit. Illicit means is a verb, and illicit is an adjective. And to elicit something means to draw something out. If you know this phrasal verb, to draw something out, to extract, to draw something out, to elicit. Very often you can elicit emotions from the audience or reactions from the audience. Draw those reactions out, bring those reactions out. So if you're unsure what draw out and bring out mean, please go to my website and buy my phrasal verb book, because they do deal with elicit a response or elicit a reaction. Illicit is different. So somebody just made a mistake there. This is the verb with the E, but illicit with an I refers to something which is possibly perverse or illegal or unacceptable, immoral, especially immoral in fact. So illicit pornography, something like that would be pornography which is particularly immoral, or any kind of illicit behaviour, immoral behaviour in some kind of way. So they are very different. Imply and infer, God, I'm giving myself some difficult ones to do today. Imply means to imply is when somebody is expressing something. They are expressing a certain idea. They're implying something. They're expressing an idea. But infer is how you understand that idea. What inferences you can make from that idea. So somebody implies something and then you make inferences. So they are different. I mean, they're kind of opposites in some ways. One person implies and the other person infers. Okay, I hope that's clear. If it's not, check the dictionary. Incredible and incredulous. Incredible means unbelievable. Incredulous means that that you don't believe something. So if something is incredible, it's unbelievable, it's amazing. But if you are incredulous, you don't believe something. Okay, you find that impossible to believe. We wouldn't say you are incredible, because that sounds like you are fantastic, amazing, unbelievable. No, we mean you are incredulous. You find it impossible to believe that that's the case. Okay, past, which is a preposition, and past, which is a verb in the past tense. That's basically it. You know, if you walk past the church, you want the preposition because you've gone further than the church. You've walked past the church. But if you pass the church and you say, I passed the church yesterday, then you need the verb because you're saying, I passed the church, yeah? But I walked past the church with this preposition. Is that clear? I hope it's clear. Okay, next one, historic and historical. Again, this is really quite difficult to do, but I'll do my best. Historical means pertaining to history. It means that something has some kind of relationship to history. It pertains to history. This difference, by the way, is pretty similar to this one down here with economic and economical. But you can talk about all sorts of things can be historical. Any evidence that shows you about the past is historical evidence because it's showing you, it's pertaining to history. It's important for the study of history. So that evidence will be historical. Historic, we use to say that something has amazing importance in history. So this just means pertaining to the subject of history. This means amazing importance in history. And so you might say that the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand was a historic event, a world historic event, because it had such massive consequences for Europe and for World War One. Yeah, a lot of people will say that it sparked off World War One. So this was a historic event. It wasn't just pertaining to history, it was incredibly important. It changed the course of history. So historic things, usually historic events, change the course of history. Yeah, a historic discovery. What an excellent suggestion. That's a great example. You wouldn't say a historical discovery. It's a historic discovery because it changes the course of history. But historical just means pertaining to history. So pertaining to the study of history as a school subject. That's all it means. So books about history, well, you'd normally say history books, actually, not historical books, certainly not history books for that. But historical just means pertaining to history, okay? Insure and assure. If you assure someone, you're trying to make them feel better, give them confidence, build them up. But if something ensures that something else will happen, it makes sure that something else will happen. I'm sorry, guys, I can't read at the same time as I'm speaking, so I'm just going to have to forget the comments. But ensure means to make sure, and assure someone. You don't insure someone, you assure somebody. So assure somebody, give them confidence. Insure, make sure that something happens, for example. Okay, compliment someone means to say nice things about them. Compliment is not the same, okay? We did this word recently when I talked about subject, complement inversion. And compliment just means that something goes well with something else. So something, you might say that the something on your plate, like the oysters, complement the taste of something else. So complement means to go together with something in some kind of way, which is why after the verb to be, a copular verb, you've always got the complement after it and you've got the subject before it. That just means that this describes the subject. It's the subject complement. It goes with the subject. But it's not the same as to say something nice about someone, which is to compliment someone. So this is to go with, this is to praise, really, to say nice things. Okay, simple on number 20, noun, counsel, verb, to counsel somebody, to give them advice, to counsel them. But noun, council. So the local council is the local government that organises things for your area. Okay, economic means slightly different from economical. Economical means that something it doesn't waste much, okay? If something doesn't waste much, then it's economical. So maybe you've got a very economical car. It doesn't use loads of petrol. It doesn't guzzle loads of petrol. It doesn't use up loads of petrol. But economic means pertaining to the economy. Okay, so economic factors you might talk about. You might say there are a number of economic factors that make it look like we can expect a recession next year. Yeah, and that just means factors pertaining to the economy. But economical means thrifty, frugal in some kind of way, if you know these adjectives. Frugal, thrifty, yeah, it means you're being careful with your money or your time and you're not wasting it. So this one is basically when you don't waste a lot of something, when something's economical if it doesn't waste a lot. Okay, stationary means still, and stationary with an E means pens, pencils, rubbers, the things that you buy from W.H. Smith's in England. Anyway, it's stationary. I've got loads of stationery down here. In fact, I can show you if you want to see. Maybe this is the clearest way of showing you. Stationery is this, with an E. Okay, that's stationary, but this stationary means still, not moving. It's the opposite of moving. Okay, dependent and dependent, again, easy ones really, because this is the noun with an A, and this is the adjective. So we all know what dependent as an adjective means. It means you depend on other people or you rely on other things. However, a dependent is somebody who relies on you. So I have 2 young children. I could easily say I live at home with my wife and 2 dependents. Yeah, they depend on us for their food, for their water, for their shelter, everything. So they are dependents. And that's quite formal. It will be on forms and things like that you have to fill in. Okay, quite a hard one now. This one sounds like quite a posh word to me anyway. I was loath to admit that. It means reluctant, this one. I was loath to admit that. I was reluctant to admit that. I didn't really want to admit that. But loathe means hate. So they're both No, sorry, this one's an adjective, this one's a verb, but this one means to hate. If you say I loathe fish and chips, it means I hate fish and chips. But you could say I was loath to eat the fish and chips. So this is loaf and this is loathe. Slightly different pronunciation, loathe, loaf. I was loath to eat the fish and chips because I loathe fish and chips, something like that. And this last one, I think I've mispronounced this a couple of times. As a verb, to prophesy, it sounds like the last Y is an I, to prophesy. But as a noun, a prophecy, the prophecies of Nostradamus, is prophecy. So prophesy, verb, prophecy, noun. Okay, I hope that's all clear. Gonna have to go now because I've got a lesson very soon, but thanks everybody for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the class. Please click on like, click